When you're doing applique beadwork, or you want to do earrings or anything like that, there's a lot of controversy out there on what's the right stuff to use, what not to use, what's possible. There's so many things that are available nowadays, but you really have to look and answer the question, how durable do I want this product to be? So one of the things that is out on the market now, and it's a really nice product, it's called Pellon, and that's Pellon. And it is actually 100% polyester. It can be washed in a washing machine, put in the dryer. It can be hand washed. It doesn't lose its shape. And it's actually a stiffener that is used in handbags. They can use it in the bottom of handbags. It's been used on baseball caps. They can make baskets with it. Anything that you want to shape where you want the shape to be maintained. So this is a cloth sample that I'm working on. And I just want you to see, when I talk about layering your work, when we do applique beadwork, we need to have some layers. And when I talk about layers, we need to have of course, the background fabric. And on this piece, I've used a wool cloth. So we want to create what I call a beadwork sandwich with a backing that adds support and firmness to your beadwork, plus our stitch and tear on top, and our background fabric is sandwiched between the two. When you sandwich, your canvas is always cut larger than your design, and you can see my design here on the stitch and tear. So my canvas is always larger than my actual design or my background fabric. Your canvas plays a very important part. One of them is we put it on the back so that our knots don't come through. It allows us to do our beadwork nicely. We go and move from one spot to the next. We don't have to worry about the knots pulling through. It adds a little bit of firmness to our fabric as we're doing our stitching. But also it adds another support. So you want to stitch your canvas to your background first, and then your stitch and tear on, going through all of them. The reason why we do this is because when we get finished outlining our design, and you can see on this one I've started doing my outlining. When we're done with the outlining, we have to remove the stitch and tear so that we can do the filling in. So what I like to do, because I like to keep my canvas secured to the back, I do a separate one for the stitch and tear, so that when I pull out those threads, then I just pull out the stitch and tear. I'm not pulling out the edge of the canvas, and my canvas isn't going to be flopping around later on. Your design is on your stitch and tear. Okay, so I've used the water-soluble ink because I know that it's not going to come off unless I get this wet, and I've attached it to my background fabric. So now what I'm doing is I'm starting the process of my beaded design. So I've done a white center for my rosette, but before I did that, I cut away that part of my stitch and tear. The reason why I did that is so that once I've got my rosette done, I don't have to worry about digging that stitch and tear out afterwards. So what I did was I cut that circle right on the circle, started in the center, and worked my way out to the cut edge. So what's going to happen now is I'm not going to have to fight with that after all my beading is done, or pardon me, all my outlining is done and I'm ready to take the stitch and tear off. I'm not going to have to fight with that center trying to dig it out. Because one of the things that we do mark for on the program is there any stitch and tear left in the design? So when you start your design, always start from the center. I've started with my center rosette, and I'm going to work out. Okay, so when I work out on my design, pretty much what I do is I look for the one petal. So I did my rosette, I'm going to do my petals, then I'm doing my leaves. So you can see center, middle, outside. So you have to work in a combination. You can't start from the outside and work in, because if you do, what's going to happen is you're going to create wrinkles and rumples and it's not going to fit properly. So work from the inside out. what we're trying to do is not force or push or misshape our center that's already there. We're trying to maintain that, and that's our work off point. So on this floral design, I have one petal that goes, both ends touch to my center. So that's the petal I'm going to start with first. The most important thing is not to misshape your petal. When we do outlining, our outlining is the most important part of this piece of artwork. Other thing to remember when we do outlining, you stitch between every bead. So we're going to tack down between every bead. The reason why we do this, a much firmer, steadier, secure outline. And you can see this petal right here, this would be the very last one. It wouldn't really matter from what side that you start from. Just make sure, because you're going into the petals, of course, just make sure that you don't push it so much that you're misshaping those other petals. Your leaves would be done next, and then you have them all done. Then you remove the stitch and tear. Really important. With stitch and tear, it's very thin. You can tear it. That's why they call it tear it. You stitch it, then you tear it. And your stitches actually act like perforations so that when you pull it, it's going to tear away from your work.